Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the totally awesome podcast. I'm only just now recording now since I said that. It's JoshAgeddon, Sean McCarty, your Colonial champion, and the Bay Area Brawler, Skyler Greenberg. We're reviewing Hard to Kill because if anything describes TNA perfectly, it is that. The cockroach professional wrestling company that is TNA. We're also on the Core Martial podcast. It's a simulcast. I totally didn't steal any ideas. Sean has no proof of that on this channel.
You literally have the first 3 minutes of the CMP proving that you told the idea.
But you don't have to listen to the first 3 minutes. Also, apparently, me and Skyler are chained to chairs, and Skyler likes it, and Sean vomited, and I liked that.
Yeah, and while he's and here's a TNA towel. Go wipe yourself off.
I was wondering what the deal with the TNA towel was.
So let's set up a little background here because this is unorthodox, let's just say. For us to be doing a TNA pay-per-view, we're all healthy, right? None of us we haven't caught the brain worms, we don't have the fungi, we haven't caught the that weird fungus that grows in your brain and hatches out into a bunch of million different spiders. None of that has happened.
Yeah, and I've heard that fungus is hard to kill.
Yes. And buckle up, folks. This whole pay-per-view is going to be full of those jokes.
Yeah. And I can't buckle up. I'm already tied to a chair.
That's right. Well, I was talking to the audience at large, the collective you. But in any case, the reason this is happening is that TNA lately has been making a lot of good signings of some good talent. And I kind of forced both of these guys because I was interested to see, because they had done a very good job hyping me up to see their new look redesigned as the TNA logo. They've changed all of their title belts and they look awesome.
I will agree. The TNA belts are like the best belts in wrestling as of today.
And so we figured, because other than the WWE, there is no realistic wrestling program that exists. Fight me. We wanted to find an alternative. And I said,
wait, hold on. If I'm fighting you, am I fighting forever?
No. Not unless you pay me $90.
Man, that game and the online community for that game was easy to kill.
Yes. And that game is shockingly similar to the look that the old TNA game had. But the whole point is that I wanted to see, because there's been buzz around TNA, I want to see where they are. I'm not saying they're going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. We know they're not going to be, even though we saw one on this show.
Yeah, there was a sliced bread in the main event.
There was. And it wasn't the greatest thing. It happened. It wasn't the greatest thing. But we're going to break it down. We're going to see how Impact's doing, how TNA's doing, and whether they stand a chance to maybe make a play if they sharpen some things up into maybe a bigger TV deal so that more people can actually get some eyeballs on that program, so we can have something other than WWE we can flip to occasionally.
Yeah. And for me personally, I've never been a big TNA fan. This is also the first time we're talking about TNA on TAW Gaming, even though we have shockingly similar names. But I've always seen it as the clear not WWE promotion that wishes it was WWE. And since they've rebranded from Impact back to TNA, and they're under new management, I'm also willing to give them a chance, which is totally me saying that honestly, not reading off a cue card with Sean holding a gun to the back of my head because he forced us to watch this show. Please help.
I actually wrote down the please help part of it too. He's not getting any.
Yeah.
And but now that we are on the other side and you are all still alive and I can't find the keys to these padlocks, why don't we talk about our overall feelings of the show? Let's talk with the perennial hater first. Skyler, what'd you think?
Let's back the hippo up a second, okay? Listen, TNA has always been this weird, like, pseudo big company. It's too small to be considered like a regional company, but it's too big to be considered competition for WWE. I don't hate TNA, okay? I want to be very clear about that right now before you all start adding me.
Slide into his DMs.
Skyler, you said you became a fan in kind of what, 2010 of wrestling-ish? So
Listen. I was a wrestling fan in 2006, 7, 8, and when I was watching TNA in 2009, I'm like, okay, there's never something I can watch on like a Thursday night. Back when they were on Thursday night on the Spike channel, and I watched TNA for several years until they started to do stupid stuff, and I just could not go with the program anymore.
Yeah, because I came to realize that a lot of the best years of TNA happened before I really started actively watching it. And then, I got a good run in 2009, but even then things were starting to get weird. And then came the geezers, and then it just went all of these different directions, and it turned into a glorified indie show at its worst.
Yeah.
There were some really terrible times that went through, including Mickey James getting murdered.
I remember that.
And who shot Tommy Dreamer or Johnny Swinger and whatever that was, and Swoggle and Tessa Blanchard winning the world title. Like there's a lot of TNA horse shit. There's no lie. There's a reason it's been the butt of wrestling jokes for so long.
Yeah.
But this is the most positive energy and buzz around this product than there's been in easily a decade and a half.
And like I mentioned previously, that's because a lot of the people that are responsible for why TNA has been seen as a joke, they're not involved with it anymore. So it can actually, take in oxygen.
Yeah, and Scott D'Amore is the one who's kind of developed it as, listen, it's my baby, and I'm going to get this thing right, and I'm going to figure this thing out. And I really have a lot of major respect for what Scott D'Amore, whether it works or not, what he's attempted to do. I always respect out of a guy to bring TNA back and make it feel like something that is worth watching.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, again, your thoughts. Oh, sorry, Sky, go ahead.
It also helps that TNA has always had a collection of talent, whether you like them or not, that are loyal to the company and put their best effort for the company and try and get this piece of shit company money somehow, some way.
And it may just be working. I mean, they made a point to mention it several times on the night that this was the best attended show TNA had in 8 years.
Yeah, they did mention that several times.
Yeah, about 8 times, I think.
And it's the most. And AEW looks at the show and they're like, "Man, I wish we had this kind of attendance."
Well, if they stopped booking the fucking MJM Grand, they would. The problem with AEW is that they don't book shows based on the amount of people coming to see them.
Honestly, we were just talking about TNA at its meme dirt worst. AEW starting to head in that direction.
Yeah, the second that they start filming episodes at the Hardy compound, we're gonna know.
Yeah.
That AEW is, well, let me rephrase that. The second they start filming episodes at the Hardy compound again at AEW,
you know what? You're right.
Then we'll know. But TNA, they really are trying to distance themselves from a lot of that goo-ga. Mm-hmm. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And you could feel that in the tone of the show here tonight.
I would agree.
Now, I have to ask, and I know the answer. Did either of you watch the pre-show? No? Well, let me break it down for you then.
Well, real quick. Let me give my general thoughts on this show.
Yes, well, what is your general thoughts? I don't want your admiral thoughts or your captain thoughts. I want your general thoughts.
My colonel thoughts on this show. Pop them open like a bag of popcorn.
General thoughts.
My captain thoughts here at the TAP. I thought this was a good show. Not knock my knackers off crazy, but there were a few things here and there that I didn't really care for. But on the whole, especially the 3 singles matches, I enjoyed watching the show. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that was kind of the tone I took out of it. It's like, is this the greatest thing ever? No. But is anything on this slapping me in the face offensive?
No.
Only on the pre-show, which I am going to herein break down for both.
And I didn't watch. And for a rebrand, well, a rebrand, this is a good, solid first step.
Yes. I came up with the phrase, they're on their way.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's the pre-show. We get this new woman announcer who is basically Chinese Samantha Irvin, but without the ball grabbing.
But wait, hold on. She's black. Wait. I'm sorry, wrong person.
Yeah, well, who are you talking about, Sky?
Has he been poking around? Has he been poking around in my basement again?
That's right. Well, speaking of, here comes Rich Swann versus Steve Macklin. And can I take a moment to say that while I refuse to learn their not WWE names, the commentating team of Tom Phillips and Aiden English was solid. And it was a hell of a lot better than Josh fucking Matthews.
I am so grateful that there was no Josh Matthews on this show. The dude just screams dork. Although
he was cancerous to that show's commentary team for far too long.
He basically became TNA's heel Michael Cole.
For 8 years. No wonder they didn't sell tickets.
Yikes. I won't lie, I'm not crazy about Tom Phillips. He is still kind of a dork, and his voice annoys me. But Aiden English was great. I could listen to Aiden English do the was he color? I think he was color.
Yes.
I could listen to him do color all night long. They just need a better play-by-play. But that's just my opinion. Tom Phillips wasn't awful. I just thought I just don't really care for the guy.
Skyler, care to face fuck your way into this conversation? Oh, sorry, that's Tom Phillips.
Okay. The reason why I didn't watch the pre-show was because I was having technical issues being able to watch it. So I was kind of stuck with whatever I could. The little bit that I saw of this match was not bad. I think Steve Macklin and Rich Swann were fine. Although Swann, to me, this was a match where I watched it. I'm like, oh yeah, he's in TNA.
Yeah, well, he was a former TNA World Champion. Both of these guys were. And I had that
I forgot about that.
I had that meme of the guy who, like, just turns around and just tilts his head looking all confused, like, with the question marks over him. Yeah, I didn't quite understand. Yeah, I forgot about that. But it's Rich Swann versus Steve Macklin, and they start out with a collar and elbow tie-up. That would be a theme on this night.
I knew that would put a smile on your face, Sean.
And honestly, this wasn't bad. It went longer than it should have for a pre-show match. But, you know, it wasn't bad. They honestly were decent. They were trying to do, Rich Swann's trying to kind of get a little bit of that, like, junkyard dog mojo with the gimmick that he's doing right now. And I'm here for it. It just, I don't think he's that very facially expressive to pull that kind of a gimmick off. He seems to be kind of more stoic into that, but the crowd was into this. There was a nice leg drop on the apron. Not quite Undertaker-like, but not terribly. There was a nice delayed Uragi that was done by Steve Macklin. Then the comeback was pretty good, but by Rich Swann, who was the babyface, but it had about 4 too many shots. There was a top rope cutter. The cutters were in high supply in the pre-show. There's a top rope there was a second rope 450 that Rich Swann did that I was kind of impressed with, because it's one thing to do it from the top rope, but it's another to do it from the second rope. Rich Swann is very gifted with that.
I used to, like, when he was in WWE, he would do that, like, he would, like, hop up and down a couple times to build momentum and then do a 450 from the standing position. I always thought that was very impressive.
Yeah. But then it really started getting a little long in the tooth because they started trading finishes. Not, like, terribly, but it just, the fans are starting getting less and less into it. And then finally, Macklin wins with a driving double arm DDT. And then they do a backstage promo with this faction called The System. And one thing I will say about TNA is that their faction names are lame.
Yeah.
A lot of the names are lame. And then I actually have benefit of the doubt that maybe they'll improve that somewhat in the next several months. But anyway, the funny
They need to have a rival faction that's called Of a Down.
Right, literally. Well, they had the funniest thing about this is they're all together, and Moose, who's towering over all of them, goes like, "It's a new TNA, and TNA is family." And I'm like, is he trying to be Vin Diesel right now? Like, is this Fast and Furious?
He even does the fist pump thing.
And yeah, it was but it was just a weird deal. But then we get the next little piece of this. Did either of you see AJ Francis show up? Did this?
You
Do
mean?
you know who AJ Francis is, Josh? Again,
Would it happen to be Top Dollar?
it is in fact Top Dollar.
They showed they showed a replay, or they recapped it during the main show, and when I saw that, I cringed, groaned, cried, and then died.
Well, here's my thing. The promo itself wasn't bad, but it also went long. And my first question was, didn't the Acclaimed do this like a year and a half ago?
Oh, looky, TNA is doing something that somebody else did. What a concept.
But then Joe Hendry shows up and does his own music video, basically just shitting on the fact that Top Dollar flopped in the WWE and over the top rope. And that was funny, but it went so long. And the whole thing is, this dude, AJ Francis, this video that Joe Hendry made was easily 2.5 minutes. And AJ Francis, instead of getting mad, just sat there and watched the whole video and then let DJ Woo Kid, who I call DJ Who Cares, come and hit Joe Hendry with his laptop, which I'm sure was more expensive than the check he was getting that night. So I don't know if that was the right decision. But anyway, so that happened.
Yeah.
I'm glad that. But the thing about the pre-show is, at the end of the night, I was happy that everything that was on the pre-show was on the pre-show.
I'm glad that everything you're describing was on a show that I didn't watch.
So.
What? Gee, why does Joshua always skip pre-shows? Well, they are not exactly Top Dollar entertainment.
Although I will say that one of the things that I think TNA has done a pretty good job with is the hype packages.
Yes, I did enjoy all of their hype packages all night.
Yeah, I thought their production was pretty on point all night, actually. I didn't really have much to say about camera cuts or anything like that. I have one instance I can think of where I thought the camera should have done something different.
There were a couple instances where they had some trouble, like, turning certain people's mics on. Like, when they would go from
pretty quick.
When they would go from segment to segment, like, they went backstage to do whatever dumb shit with AJ, and it took them a minute to turn, the microphone on. And then they were going to the announcers, and it took them a second to turn the microphone on. But other than that, the production was fine.
Yeah, because whoever's at the switchboard is asleep at the fucking wheel. But in any case,
well, can you blame him? He was watching AJ. AJ, what's his last new name again?
Francis. AJ Francis.
AJ.
That's his real name, by the way.
AJ Khalid. That's what I'm gonna call him.
Yeah. Well.
You mean DJ Khaled?
Yeah, AJ Khaled.
AJ Khaled.
AJ Khaled. That actually that sounds better than Francis.
It does sound better than AJ. If he did AJ Khaled and started like ripping off you know what? That might actually work for him. I don't hate that idea. You might have just tripped into something here, Josh. Again.
I might have just saved this man's career. You're welcome. My check better be in the mail.
Well, match 2 was Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers of the System versus Frankie Kazarian and Eric Young
of the Down.
I will say this. This was a decent tag match, and I was a little sad that the TNA Originals didn't end up on the main show, but it's just as well. For some reason, Eric Young came to the ring in like what I can only describe as like a fully fleshed out MF Doom mask. And he's got a back tattoo. He's got a giant back spread now. Eric Young looks ridiculously like he's something else, man. It's definitely different. Of course, we get another collar and elbow tie-up. I have gained quite a lot of weight, but even I'm in better shape than Eddie Edwards. Flop Dollar is in better shape than Eddie Edwards right now. He looks like what Kevin Owens looked like when he showed up to WWE in 2014. It's flub-a-dub-dub. This man likes his grub.
And can't fit into a tub.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I heard that you were not impressed with Eddie Edwards' appearance here.
Well, I remember Eddie in the Wolves where he was just this cut guy.
Yeah,
and
I do
think
too.
all of the time being loyal to TNA when TNA was shit in the bed for years, I think it took its toll on old Eddie.
Wasn't his finisher the Boston Knee Party?
Yeah, and he still does it. I mean, it's not that he wasn't even. It's not that he did anything necessarily bad. It's just that it's like he just couldn't stop eating Danishes and coughing up the flaky remains. And I think that's kind of where we're at with Eddie Edwards. Brian Myers, you okay, Skyler? Do you need a lozenge?
Are you also choking on cornflakes?
Yes, you have a Danish that you are heaving into your gullet?
I'm just coughing at the description that you're giving me of this.
That's right. You're coughing because it's so painful to your lungs to hear that Eddie Edwards is a fat lardo.
Look at that fat piece of shit.
Wow.
Brian
Myers.
That's
true. Eddie Edwards looks awful.
Eddie Edwards is so fat that Chris Jericho's just like, damn.
Eddie Edwards is so fat he ate Chris Jericho's joke.
Eddie Edwards is so fat, Eddie Kingston said, hey, do you need some advice?
Eddie Edwards is so fat, Eddie Kingston is asking for advice. I need to get fatter. And you seem to be done. You know what? You know why this happened, though? Because Eddie Edwards has been hanging out for the last 7 or 8 years with Tommy Dreamer.
Oh.
Yeah, speaking of which.
Why you gotta do that?
Tommy Dreamer is...
I didn't do this. He did this.
Tommy Dreamer is also so fat that he was like, that joke was delicious. I want some.
Oh, we'll get to Tommy Dreamer. Don't worry about that.
Do we have to?
But Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers are both tag experts. This was a very good, well-framed match. They got good heat. All 4 of these guys are veterans. I mean, they all know what they're doing. You know, this had a really good hot tag to Kazarian. They did a springboard leg drop that nearly missed from Kazarian on the comeback. There was a backpack stunner and an elbow that wasn't a finish, but that was from Edwards and Myers. But then Kazarian hits something, and then Eric gets an elbow drop, and it's a 2 count. So they both get a combo with an elbow drop. It degenerated a little bit, but the finish was Brian Myers is about to be hit by Kazarian's thing. He pokes him in the eye, pushes Kazarian back. Eddie Edwards hits his Boston Knee Party, and Brian Myers hit this big clothesline called the Roster Cut, which is a silly name for a finish. And
it's not as bad as Dean Ambrose's wacky line.
Yeah, well, but that is another thing I will mention. No offense to Brian Myers, but a clothesline finish for a guy that doesn't have the arms the size of Gunther or Moose doesn't quite work.
Or JBL.
It doesn't quite work. It's a big clothesline, but it's not it's going to finish the match clothesline.
It's not oh my God, what the hell? He looks like he's dead.
Yeah.
It's just a clothesline.
It's just a clothesline. And Eddie, well, actually, I tell a lie. I did the finish backwards. Myers hits the clothesline, then Eddie Edwards gets the Boston Knee Party after that. Although, you should call it the Boston Cream Party because he looks like a fucking donut. And that's basically the whole deal there.
I'm just imagining some random wrestler just getting mowed down by a giant donut.
Well, But
I mean, that's basically what Eddie Edwards is at this point.
If Eddie Edwards is the donut, then this man who's next is the whole fucking bakery.
Sean, what was your description of Tommy Dreamer in the group chat? Because it made me laugh so fucking hard.
I'm getting there. Trust me. I'm going to say it here for the folks. It's Crazy Steve versus Tommy Dreamer in a no disqualification match for the Digital Media Championship, which is their fancy name for Internet title.
Why couldn't they have just called it the Internet, or at the very least, a social media championship?
And Crazy Steve comes down, and I want you both to look up Crazy Steve's entrance. Crazy Steve looked like if Oogie Boogie spent an all-day afternoon splurging an American Eagle. And
what?
That's the way I would explain the outfit Crazy Steve wore to the ring.
This mental image concerns me.
It's literally, he looks like, that's the only way I could describe it. Oogie Boogie went to American Eagle is literally the only way I could actually come up with this.
Well, for one, I don't know who Oogie Boogie is, but I'll take your word for it.
Oogie Boogie from not Nightmare Before Christmas. Yes, Nightmare Before Christmas. Duh.
I've never watched that movie before.
Of Jack Skellington and all of that. Well, you'll see. We'll pull the comparison up for Oogie Boogie. Anyway.
But was he a bear? Did he have some hair?
Oh, no. Well, no, because it massive. No, you'll see. You'll see. You're the one editing. Just stay tuned. Tommy Dreamer, on the other hand, he looks like somebody dumped his ass in a river for 3 days and just fished his ass out to come wrestle.
Okay, I'm looking up this entrance now. So
I will. I'll keep making fun of Tommy Dreamer while you read. Tommy Dreamer said people might be offended by that ponytail. Today I'd say yes, I was.
This outfit. Why is Crazy Steve with 2 Z's?
Yes.
That's what happens that's what happens to people when they watch his matches.
I see what you did there.
Well, and anyway, so...
Well, you don't like Crazy Steve?
Actually, I don't hate Crazy Steve. Here's the surprising thing about this match. Even though Tommy Dreamer looks like the Michelin Man wore polka dots, and honestly, and even though that is the case, Crazy Steve, he's got a physique, he's got a look, he's small. He's very small. He's smaller than I thought he was. But this match started out with an actual decent amount of wrestling and brawling in the ring. They showed some restraint here. I was impressed with how much restraint they showed. Tommy Dreamer can't sell, though. He literally, he falls down and he looks like the Kool-Aid Man if he's glass broke. And he's just sitting there, just kind of waddling. I said to Josh again, he's laying down and waddling. How does that happen? I don't know. Tommy Dreamer is that big.
A laying waddle. It's like if you were trying to do the worm without using your arms and it just didn't work.
Yeah, and honestly, the match wasn't even bad. And what I wrote down was this isn't even bad, but it'd be more watchable without Dreamer in it. If Crazy Steve had this match with another guy who looked relatively in shape and could move around, this match might have actually been passable until the Forks show up.
Oh, no.
But the Forks shows up because that's been the story of this matchup. They've been feuding for a year, apparently.
Oh, wow, and really?
Then they get then they bring in the trash can and a kendo stick, and we're losing ground here. And finally, they bring out the big velvet bag of stupidity, which, you're going to enjoy this, guys. You're going to enjoy this one. Inside the velvet bag of stupidity, I want you both to guess what was in the bag. JoshAgeddon, you first. What was in the bag of stupidity this time?
I'm guessing it wasn't thumbtacks, because that's usually what they put in their little satchels. So, Legos.
It is not Legos. Skyler?
It's thumbtacks?
It is not thumbtacks. In this velvety Crown Royal bag, and I assure you folks, I am not making this up. Google it. He pulls out 30 kitchen dinette sets with forks in them. Wait. He gets Tommy Dreamer in the corner and shoved all 30 of these forks underneath Tommy Dreamer's shirt, all up underneath them garlic bread, and just got up in there with all that pasty white alabaster flabba-dabba. And then you can see like 2 or 3 forks sticking out of the neck of Tommy Dreamer's t-shirt. And then he just runs and just missile drop kicks the whole thing, like all of the forks into the Tommy Dreamer. And the fans, aptly so, say, "Fork him up."
Why?
I have so many questions I do not want the answers to.
What the fork, man?
Yeah, literally, and it was... But I will say this, I have never before seen somebody raid catering of 30 kitchen sets to use on an opponent. And I'll tell you what, honestly, I'm guessing that each one of those Tommy Dreamer used in catering before the match started. And therefore, Tommy Dreamer was not surprised when he saw them. And maybe Crazy Steve is kind of like Mr. Clean and just wants things clean and took them all and said, "These are all your forks, Tommy." And anyway, they finally got... Crazy Steve ended up winning. Tommy Dreamer lost the digital media belt, which I hope means this is the only time and the last time we ever see Tommy Dreamer ever. One could only hope. But they could get something out of Crazy Steve if they played their cards right. Unfortunately, he was wasted on Tommy Dreamer here today.
You know, Sean, you have reaffirmed my racism against pre-shows. So thank you.
Well, the pre-show doesn't have a race.
Yeah, I disagree.
Well,
and if it does, it's one that I don't like.
Well, I will say this. There have been worse pre-shows perpetrated onto people in the past. This could have been worse. It could have been better. But it could have been worse. But I don't think y'all really missed anything that much. Because now it's main show time. Mm-hmm. And the main show begins with Ultimate X.
Oh boy.
The ladies, in quotes. Tasha Steele versus Alicia Edwards versus Jody Threat versus Danny Luna versus Giselle Shaw versus Zaya Brookside, who I guess was a surprise entrant, but I did not know who she was.
She's the
Zaya
only...
Brookside is one of the former WWE wrestlers that used to be in NXT UK's women's division.
Wasn't she in one of the Mae Young Classics?
She was.
That's what I knew her from. She was the only person in this match I recognized.
Got it. Okie dokes. Well, 6 women, 1 giant X in the middle of the top of the ring. And what were your thoughts, Skyler?
Well, we're now on to the part of the show that I watched, even though I had difficulty watching it because, again, our streaming issues were very apparent.
Yeah, because you're not dropping $40 for TNA's programming. Not on show number 1. No offense, TNA, but no.
I have better things to spend my money on, like my student loans.
I felt that. My wallet felt that one.
But I mean, this wasn't bad? ? But there's a lot of things where it's a multi-person ladder apparatus thing. These matches generally go a certain way, which is spots and spots and spots.
Yeah, and I mean it's the same deal as when we usually get with the women's Money in the Bank and a lot of those deals. And honestly, I didn't think this was terrible. I thought that they set the tone decently. I mean, it definitely felt coordinated, would be the way that I would put it. Everyone was just kind of getting to the spot that you're doing your deal, you know. I will say that to Jody Threat, we have said this many, many times, and we will say it again.
Yep.
Screaming is not a gimmick.
Me and Sean did commentary for our wrestling shows earlier today, and we talked about this a little. I'm making an addendum to that. Not only is screaming not a gimmick, but also being tatted up and a punk rocker and wagging your tongue around, that is also not a gimmick. Brief little message to all the whammon out there. Just because you are like, I'm going to get a bunch of tattoos and be a punk rocker because that'll make me special. It won't. There are millions of punk rocking, tongue wagging, tatted up girls out there with flaming hair of some description that's all different shades of the rainbow. You are all the same exact person. Like, honestly...
Well, not all of you.
Punk rock for women is honestly the new basic, I'm discovering, and I hate it. And
everyone wants to be Lita. What can we say?
True.
Yeah.
And that leads to my opinion on this match. I thought this was good. Although I didn't really care for Jody 3 because not only because she's like if Ruby So What got a little pudgy, except she's not anywhere near as bad as Ruby So What. Just similar gimmick. It's just I didn't really care for her goofy facial expressions.
Yeah, I mean, it got a little over the top at times, and I mean, I feel I haven't really seen much of her. Apparently, she's been around. This is not the first time she's competed in TNA, like I would know that.
But I enjoyed this match, and honestly, compared to like we were bringing up the women's Money in the Bank ladder matches in WWE, all of those are terrible. But this actually was not bad. It was a spot fest, like Skyler stated. I mean, if you sprayed a can of spot remover in the middle of the ring, it would immediately just skip to the next match. But I thought it was fine. And honestly, the person I was most impressed with was the winner of the match, Giselle Shaw. Is that Giselle's last name, Shaw?
Yes.
Again, never heard of this person before in my life, but Giselle looked the most believable in the entire match. And then Giselle won. And I kind of wanted Xia Brookside to win purely because she's the only one in the match I ever recognized. But it was your standard fair spot fest. No one looked like clumsy, except for Jody Threat, however you say her name. This was fun.
Well, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Because there was, in fact, a spot that I thought was not too great, and that was from Danny Luna, I think her name was. Danny Luna picked up Giselle Shaw on a powerbomb and landed her like square on her ass.
Oh yeah, I do remember. I vaguely remember that.
And I was like, oh, Giselle's going to feel that one in the morning. And if you saw Danny's face, she cringed because she knew damn well she did not lay her flat.
Okay, addendum to what I said. It's not like women's Money in the Bank ladder matches where every spot is clumsy.
Right.
Most every spot is clumsy.
But, like, I enjoyed this.
It could have been way worse.
Mm-hmm.
I think it felt cool. It felt very rehearsed at the beginning. Mm-hmm. It kind of calmed into itself after a little while. But there was more cutters. That Tower of Doom looked very much like a struggle.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how that was going to end at one point. But then there was another feat of strength, which I kind of wish they had saved for later because of what was coming up later. But that's another thing. And then they bring in a kendo stick, and I got a little annoyed.
Well, you don't like kendo shits?
It'll be okay,
it wasn't
Sean.
Necessary. It was like you've got the gimmick in the in the Ultimate X itself. Like I didn't feel like it was worth doing. Because it didn't really mean anything at the by the end of it. But then they finally get up to Jody Threat did the double, like, it was supposed to be like the FU or the attitude adjustment, but she hit him with a double. It was really impressive feat of strength. The the step-up spear that Giselle Shaw tried to do to Jody Threat?
They tried, and it was less a diving spear and more a, I'm going to jump up and rip you off the top wire.
Yeah, it was a good spot in theory. In execution, and not so much.
Yeah.
But then they get to 3 of them getting to the top, and finally Giselle Shaw ends up winning it, which I thought was a ballsy choice. I will see myself out.
And that is also all I'm going. That is also all I'm going to comment on that, because I like my channel staying on YouTube where it is. So yeah.
No, here's the thing though. I will say this overtly. I want to see Giselle Shaw work a one-on-one match because I was impressed with how well she laid stuff in. It looked good. It did. I want to see if she can actually work a match that isn't a 6-woman spot fest to see if there's actually some legs and additional appendages that could be used with her.
Honestly, what a strange way to phrase that. But
I don't know what you're talking about.
One mild complaint that I have that was honestly kind of a through line throughout the show. Not every match, but this one especially. It doesn't help that I don't know who any of these people are. It really, really does not help that every single person in this match had just the most bland, forgettable entrance music I've ever heard in my life.
The entrance music all night leaves a lot to be desired, I thought. I would agree.
There was one match where, we'll get to that later, where the entrance music was actually good, and I actually put it on my playlist, but we'll get to that. But other than that, it was especially apparent in this match. The entrance music was just, it wasn't awful, it was just woefully generic.
Yeah.
It's TNA, okay? Their music has never been good.
I disagree.
Well, they've had their moments. In the past decade, I would agree with that statement. But in the early days, they had some jams. I still love My World. I still love My World.
We know, Sean. We know.
It's what you're. Yeah. Hey, say what you want. He's my Achilles heel. I love me some Jeff Jarrett.
Oh shit! Skyler, after you did that, I got an email. We now have a copyright claim on this video.
Oh, please. If anything, Jeff Jarrett's probably happy that he's getting some exposure on some channel.
And we're talking about TNA, so full circle.
I'm kind of sad that Jeff Jarrett is in AEW instead of TNA now that we're talking about it. I'd rather see him in a place that has potential. But in any case...
Not a place that sucks you like Shang Tsung's the potential out of you.
That's right. Well, thankfully, we won't need to be resuscitated with 6 fake doctors. And speaking of being resuscitated with 6 fake doctors, it's PCO versus Dirty Dango, which eventually escalates into a 6-man tag with PCO, Jake something, which is another terrible name, and Rhino against Dirty Dango, Vladimir Kozlov in khakis, or in camo, and the Slam Master J-looking guy whose name escapes me at the moment.
I very much was like, I did not care for this. Like, the second they ran in and they did the DQ, I was like, really? Then Santino came out and was like, I was the SCCG World Heavyweight Champion at one time, little did you know. Also, I am the general manager, and this is now a tag team match. Play as Holla. You will now be facing The Undertaker. Also, here's Rhino. And so I popped a little bit when I saw Santino. But then, like, I did not recognize Vladimir Kozlov at first. I thought it was just this old dude in, like, a t-shirt and pants. But then he got in the ring, and his mannerisms. And I was alone in my house, so I loudly went, and no one, I was like, is that fucking Kozlov? What? Where has he been? Why haven't I seen this man more often? And then he started wrestling.
Yeah, then we found out why.
Allegedly. My God. He looked terrible.
Skyler, what did you think about this wonderful angle with Santino laying down the law?
You wanted me to watch this show for this?
I would still argue that this is better than some of the angles we could have gotten. Like, I racked this up compared to anything that AEW does ever, and I'm probably taking this. This at least has some comedy to it. But
I mean, this was the... Whoa. I don't hate this. I just thought this was a lot of mid until it's like, oh my god, how many ex-WWE guys are we going to use? We truly are in TNA.
Yeah.
But I will say this. It's not nearly as in your face as it used to be.
Yeah, funnily enough, we're bringing them up a lot. AEW is a lot more guilty of that nowadays.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So let's go to the entrance here. This PCO entrance was so silly.
Yes.
It was so silly. And I don't know if I loved it. I mean, it reminded me of like old school NXT.
Yeah.
Which is maybe the kind of thing that they were trying to do, but PCO is like 54.
You didn't like PCO?
No, I do like PCO. It's just like, it's wild to see him get this kind of like Grandois entrance in match 2 against Dirty Dango of all people.
A couple things. One, why wouldn't they just call... Is Johnny Curtis trademarked by WWE?
Fandango is probably trademarked.
Why would you go by... Why would anyone willingly go by Dirty Dango?
He also... I don't know what happened. It's like he got somehow less personality.
Yeah. I do love that when before the match started, he was like, he has something very important he wants to tell you guys. And then Johnny Curtis... I'm Skyler Greenberg. I hate TNA.
Yeah.
Really?
And that made me laugh. And then we had this PCO entrance. I'll tell you this, I liked his entrance a lot more than I liked his wrestling.
Can you really call it wrestling? It was dives.
Yeah.
Which are cool. I mean, good for him that he's able to do all that stuff at that age. I'm not knocking that.
It was, I'm going to dive on top of people at a very awkward-looking angle and almost kill myself every time. And I'm just like, okay, I guess this is something some people are into.
Well, I think there was more of an appeal when it first started like 6 years ago, but it's kind of also running long a little bit. And I'm not a hater, but this was way more of an angle than it was an actual match.
Yeah, I will say, if of all the people that flip, I would rather see PCO flip than a man we'll be talking about in a moment later on.
Well, man, you'll be talking about in a moment.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was one moment where PCO did a leg drop in this 6-man tag, and it was to, I believe it was the Slam Master J looking gentleman, and I swear to you, PCO's ass landed right in his skull.
Yeah.
It was like, I was like, oh no.
Get those six fake doctors back out here. We need them.
Literally. But then there was the funniest thing about this whole thing, because Kozlov gets in with PCO, I think it is.
Oh, no.
And PCO shoots off Kozlov, and I swear to you, I have never seen... I don't know what the term is for the phobia of someone being, like, afraid of ropes. But he literally ran like he was afraid of ropes, because he, like, stopped, and he, like, slowed down, and then turned around, barely hit the ropes at all, and then started coming back. And you could see PCO go there going, dude, what the fuck is that?
And again, I loved the way you described it in the group chat. You were like, I've never seen... He wrestles like he had a childhood fear of ropes.
Yeah.
I popped so hard when I realized... I'm not gonna lie, I popped so hard when I realized it was Kozlov. And honestly, his terrible wrestling made me go, "Yep, that's Kozlov, all right."
Yeah.
Was Kozlov a terrible wrestler back in WWE in his prime?
Yeah, he's never been good.
He wasn't this bad.
Yeah, the years.
This looks like the last time he wrestled was in WWE.
Yeah, the years have not been kind to our friend Vladimir.
Yeah,
That's sad.
Right.
But you know what? You know what? I don't even care. I was happy to see him.
Hey, he's still employed.
Yeah.
By somebody. So
yeah.
You know what? That's better than a lot of other people.
And it wasn't like he was in there the whole time and did a 15-minute match. He was in and out.
Yeah. Look, this whole thing was an angle, but it was a passable angle. I'm not gonna shit on this. It's like
it was fine.
Santino was relatively, you know, I don't want to call him the straight man because it's still Santino, but like he kept his shenaniganery to a minimum as a director of authority. I can respect that. He's going, no, we're not going to do this a TNA way. Mr. Andersoni, Mr. Pico, here's your man. You know, he's doing Santino shtick, but if there's a spot to put Santino on this show and this amount, I'm okay with this kind of Santino on this show. I can handle this.
I'm still mad they didn't come out with the SCCG World Title belt, but I guess I can get over it.
Well, we never got a design for it.
And you never will.
That's right. Well, but then we got a bonus match. Do you like bonus matches, children?
I liked this one, surprisingly.
It's MK Ultra, which is red goth ladies, versus Decay, which is blue goth ladies.
This is where Decay came out to a song called Left Behind. That song was dope, and I put it on my playlist.
Well, glad you liked it.
Skyler, tell me what your thoughts were on this impromptu matchup.
Women.
Very good.
Extra thick.
That it?
Okay. To be serious now, I don't think this was a bad match. It just kind of like illustrates that TNA again kind of does stuff with their women's division, which normally most people don't.
Well, they have a women's tag team match that didn't end with a woman getting injured. That's new.
Or rolled up.
Progress.
Or rolled up with a schoolgirl pin.
Well, you don't like schoolgirls?
Not every single women's match.
Yeah, my lawyer has advised me not to answer that question.
Yeah, you're also not Catholic enough to answer that question.
And so, well, here's the funny thing that happened as a result of this, right? Because when they announced women's tag match, the crowd did not give a single shit.
I groaned.
And neither did I. But here's the weird thing that happened. This match wasn't very long, but Havoc standing there for 3 minutes having women just feed into her somehow got the crowd into this matchup.
I mean, the crowd was hot for everything.
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. They didn't care at all when this matchup started. They got into this matchup, and I really credit these 4 women because I didn't really care, and probably still don't, but this is still like, if Havoc is Goth Nia Jax, but people actually get into it and she's not hurting people, then let's do this.
I have a shocking statement, perhaps. I very much enjoyed this match. Like, this is not high praise. This honestly is more of an indictment or anything else than anything else. This is the best tag team match I've seen in a while. because like the crowd didn't care, they got the crowd into it, and then they went home. Like they did one comeback, and honestly, when they were doing the comeback and then Havoc got tagged in, one of the red goth ladies hit their finishing move on Havoc, got a 1 count, and she was like, "I'm a big bad monster," and sat up. And I said to myself, okay, kill both of the red gothic ladies and win. And that's what she did. And I was like, perfect. Why don't people... This doesn't need to be complicated. This was the most uncomplicated match I've ever. This was the most uncomplicated tag match I've ever seen.
Well, and I will give you credit there because that's something I also reference is that nothing in this was particularly complicated all night, and nothing. I mean, there were some matches that started to go long, but nothing really overstayed its welcome too badly.
Yeah. This match, I feel like more than anything else on the show, this was the most perfectly timed match. Because the second...
get in, get out, and have what you need to have.
Because how often, like, especially with Piper Niven, whenever she's involved with tag team matches on WWE programming, like, they don't really treat her like she's a big monster. Like, she gets tagged in, she does a couple moves, and then she tags out. And the match just continues. In this one, you tag in the big monster. The big monster is, a big monster and wins because she's a big monster. Great! Do that more often.
Yeah, sometimes it really is that simple. I mean, compared to other women's tag team matches, this was not bad at all. It did what it needed to do. I have no complaints for a match that could have easily, in literally any other review that any of us have ever done ever, this match could have been chalked up. Women's tag match could have been chalked up as the worst match on the show.
Yeah, like, I went from groaning to cheering, and that is no small feat.
Yeah, and I was impressed with this. So good on them. Good on these ladies. I don't know how much more women's tag matches we're gonna have, and as far as have what kind of a division they have for that. But at the end of the day, this one was it could have been worse. But then, I believe, because we are always afforded a skip, for those of you who are just joining the program, we always afford ourselves one skip on the main show, and I utilized mine on this next match because I am not watching an X Division triple threat match namely because of El Hijo de Vikingo, but also it's a triple threat X Division match where we're going to get spots, and then spots, and then spots, and then that's it. So I didn't see this one. Could someone fill me in?
I'm racist against pre-shows, and Sean is racist against triple threats. They are racist, and we don't like them. Okay.
I'm just assuming that Sean does not like Mexicans or Asians.
Well, he doesn't like this Mexican.
I don't really care for Asian Marty McFly as a gimmick either, by the way. And
that I don't mind. A gimmick where you're a fan of something doesn't really bother me. But my thing on this, I thought this was good, but it would have been better if it was just Chris Sabin versus Kushida. This did not need Vikingo. The story of this match was Chris Sabin and Kushida are having a good match, and Vikingo did flips. Chris Sabin and Kushida have chemistry, and Vikingo did flips. Why was Vikingo in this match? Oh yeah, so he could do flips. Although I will say, as much as none of us like Vikingo, clearly, he didn't do anything outrageously or stupid offensive in this match. He just did flips.
Okay, may I simultaneously give him a compliment and an insult?
Yes.
Yes.
El Hijo de Vikingo looks like he perfectly belongs in the TNA X Division.
Well, maybe the TNA X Division of old. Yes.
No. The TNA X Division.
Continue. Go on.
Now, here's the thing: is that El Hijo de Vikingo, he gets over because he flips, right?
Well,
mostly
he gets under with
and the
TNA flips.
And the TNA X Division is a lot of flips, right?
Also mostly, but I would argue there's a lot more psychological wrestling in X Division matches, or there used to be, depending on the participants involved, that Vikingo does not want to do. But I understand your point.
There was psychological wrestling in this match, and then Vikingo did flips.
Right, but again, let me finish my point, and then I'll move on. El Hijo de Vikingo looks like he perfectly belongs as a high flyer in the TNA X Division. You want to know what the problem with that is?
What's that?
Is that he perfectly belongs in the TNA X Division which means he is in the middle of the card. Not this, oh, he's the greatest wrestler of all time. Oh, he's the white hope of Mexico. Oh, he's AEW's latest international signing. Listen, El Hijo de Vikingo can flip and can do some athletic moves. He is not a wrestler. Now, if he was actually full-time in TNA, he would be perfect in the X Division because he could work with guys like Kushida and with Chris Sabin and learn some wrestling from those guys.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to because he's not that way, because he wants to flip and that's all he wants to do, and that's perfectly fine. He can mess up spots in front of a guy in a bull costume all day, and that's perfectly okay, right?
Don't remind me of that.
The bull costume. What is his name? Taurus?
Minotaur.
Minoturd.
Who, by the way, signed for AEW.
Of course he did.
Oh, great. He can join Kill Switch. And they can just be the herd.
They can be the kill turds.
Yeah.
But no,
that's what I'd like to do to Tony's. Kill the turd. Anyway.
Wow.
But yeah, like every flip that El Hijo de Vikingo did was good, ? But as he kept doing them, the crowd stopped caring as much as he kept doing them, because that was all he could do. I hesitate to say that this was a good triple threat match because of the triple threat match, but let's be clear. When Chris Sabin is on offense, he's really good.
Chris Sabin is awesome.
His German suplexes were nasty.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always liked Chris Sabin.
Right, and I do want to give my compliment to Chris Sabin. I will give him my flowers. The Motor City Machine Guns have always been, more than anybody else, loyal to TNA and loyal to Impact. I mean, yes, they've worked for other companies, but for the majority of their career, they stayed in TNA and they made it work, and they've been the solid backbone of the company, and they've been the ones to really carry the company through its darkest days and through its brightest days. And on some level, that is commendable. And Chris Sabin, for lack of a better word, is the perfect utility guy who can be in the middle of the card. He can be in the main event. He can be in your heated feuds. He can be in your spot matches. He can do almost anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still a really good wrestler.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I agreed as well. I wish that I was really happy for him when he won the world title against Bully Ray in 2013. I just wish that they didn't make him 2013's Lex Luger, where they only gave him the belt for 6 days, and it was very obvious that was the only reason that they were doing it, was to do a Lex Luger, TNA Lex Luger, because Aces and Eights was NWO 2.0, and they booked it exactly like it, almost. And
part of the issue is that as much as I love Chris Sabin, the part of the problem is that as much as I like Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley's the more compelling of personalities between the two of them.
I will second that after seeing the main event, which we will get to. I like both of these guys, but yeah, Alex Shelley is the man.
Yeah, I would say that I grew up watching both of them, so I appreciate both differently. I think that Sabin had his moment in the sun. I think that Shelley is making the most of the opportunity he has now.
Well,
so if you're looking at him at face value right now, it's just different. Because I think Sabin peaked earlier. Even though he's very good now, I think Sabin peaked earlier.
All right, well, Skyler, you gave Chris Sabin some flowers. I want to take a second to give Kushida some flowers, because honestly, Kushida is what Vikingo should be and wishes he was, because Kushida does a little bit of high flying and he does a little bit of flips. But he also puts some technical acumen into it. He actually, wrestles. One thing I loved about Kushida in this match, he was determined to get someone in the hoverboard lock, and he kept going after the arms of both guys, and he was struggling and trying his damnedest to put his move on people to win the match via submission. He was fighting against the arms, and I enjoyed that.
It's very good that you have a match with Sabin, who is the clear grounded one and grounded pound offense, and then you got El Hijo de Vikingos flying whatevers. That you have someone like Kushida who could do both, and more importantly was staying grounded. Although, I have to admit, this finishing sequence was nuts.
Yes, I agree.
Now, Sean, I assume you did not see the Canadian Destroyer on the on the stage, right?
I actually did see that because I grazed through TNA's Facebook page and it came up on my feed. That one spot came up on my feed, so I saw that one spot of this match.
Well, thankfully, after Saban gave Vikingo a nasty Canadian destroyer, he disappeared for the rest of the match because he was no longer essential. And
great. I would argue he never was.
I would second that motion.
And then Saban does this I don't know how to describe it. Joshua, can you describe what he did to Kushida? Because I can't describe it.
Well, it's been a couple days since I've seen the match, so I can't exactly remember.
Right, but he does this move where he takes Kushida off of the top rope, and it transitions into a power bomb. But he does something. It's weird. Go back and watch it. But Saban wins 1, 2, 3. It's the right decision. As much as I like Kushida, Saban is still the epitome of what the X division should be, which is good technical wrestling mixed with high flying.
Now,
not that Kushida can't do it, but Saban's the better representative.
Now, what I do remember about this finish that I really liked is, again, Chris Sabin and Kushida were in the ring. Chris Sabin goes for the shock driver where he crosses the legs and basically into the Falcon driver or whatever. So while he's trying to do it, Kushida grabs the arm and he's trying to, while in the fireman's carry position, he has him hooked in a Kimura, trying to get the hoverboard lock in. And Chris Sabin's fighting it, and he's like, you know what, screw you. He rips his arm away from Kushida and then hits his finishing move. He gets out of the submission while still holding Kushida on his shoulders and then hits the move and pins him. I love that. Because it was a struggle. So,
damn.
I wish this was a one-on-one match between Sabin and Kushida, and I wish that Vikingo would go back to Mexico. And wrestle,
I want to get your guys' thing on this. What's the fascination with El Hijo de Vikingo, other than the fact that he's Mexican and can fly?
He's being heavily marketed by AAA, and they have a big partnership now with TNA. So we're probably going to see more of Vikingo on this program rather than less, unfortunately. But I think that this is some concerted effort by Mexican wrestling companies to mass market this guy as the new Rey Mysterio. And guess what? He's nowhere close to it.
I think it's the whole thing, the stereotype about how a bunch of marks only care about flips. Vikingo does flips. Therefore, the cliche marks that only care about flips, they like him because he does. How many times have I said the word flips in this fucking podcast already? It's driving me nuts.
But, here's the funny thing about that, though, JoshAgeddon. I feel like less and less people do care about him, though. It's I don't feel like even the diehard flippy guys are going, I don't know if I love this guy. And he's also 5 foot goddamn nothing. And it's just, I don't know. He could
I actually think
to break that Flippy Campbell's back.
I actually think that clip where he couldn't flip on top of the bowl and he messed up twice and then just did a third spot. I think that actually has hurt him because it exposed people to the fact that he is just an athletic gymnast that can't do regular wrestling.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate you.
Way to go. Firm handshakes and hand claps all around.
Literally.
Tony Khan's very good at exposing his wrestlers for not being very good.
I will say, I said this to JoshAgeddon, and I'm going to say it here again today, right now. And this probably won't even be the hottest take I have at this podcast, given what I'm going to say at the end of this. But Tony Khan may just save the wrestling business by doing everything so terribly and just fostering all of the bad habits on his show that nobody ever wants to do anything that's ever been perpetrated on his program ever again. And it just cleans up the professional wrestling business.
So in other words, he's the TNA of 2012 in 2024.
Basically.
Yeah. Except without Vince McMahon just going, oh, well, TNA's out of the picture, so I'll just get worse.
Because remember when TNA had Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo, and why do we hire these people, and why are we going to their ideas?
Yeah, well, I think Tony is starting to change that. I think people want more. I think it's starting to expose just how flawed all of that is. I think that in an unintended way, Tony Khan is going to kill indie wrestling and bring back wrestling. And
well, not even necessarily kill indie wrestling, but just kill the aspects of indie wrestling that no one is going to like anymore. Like the high octane flipping stuff, they're burning out bodies really quickly. Like, the guys that can do this shit are having their bodies destroyed, and one by one, they're dropping like flies.
Yeah, and it's no surprise. But I mentioned wrestling a second ago. Shall we get to some of that? Because
I mean, what kind of wrestling are we talking? Are we talking the goofy wrestling? Are we talking the bark wrestling?
I'm talking about professional wrestling.
Well, real quick before we move on.
Oh, there we go.
Real quick before we move on from this match, I just have one more thing to say. And then Vikingo did flips. Continue.
Well, and now that all of that is done, we have Alexander Hammerstone. Oh, and the match is Alex Hammerstone versus Joshua Alexander. And
you didn't say it correctly. National Wrestling League's World Heavyweight Champion Alexander Hammerstone. Thank you.
I don't think that. I'm pretty sure that company doesn't exist, and neither did the SWCG company either.
I don't know what you're talking about. It exists in my heart.
That's right.
And my loins.
No, but I will say this. This match is an early contender for Match of the Year, and I did not think TNA was going to have anybody in the running. So I've got already full kudos for this. I loved almost everything about this match and the way it was constructed, but I would like to hear y'all's thoughts first. Let's start with JoshAgeddon.
Dude. Sean, when we were recording stuff earlier for our shows, I said something to you that my favorite thing about this match. And I'll repeat it here. I don't know between this and the main event which match I liked more. I loved both this and the main event. But this, I'll probably go with this as my favorite match of the night for this reason. Wrestling needs more of just putting two big, beefy, bad-looking motherfuckers in a ring that look like they would kill you if you crossed them. These are two badass-looking dudes that look like they fight for a living. And then they beat the shit out of each other for 15 minutes. Great! Why can't wrestling just be this more often? This is the most Vince McMahon sounding I'm going to be in this podcast, so get all of your secretaries and your paralegals out of here before I get a little too randy for my own good. But I just want wrestling to be this more often. As much as I like people like Johnny Gargano and Finn Balor and the smaller wrestlers, wrestling needs to have big dudes that are jacked, that can work, that just beat the shit out of each other, and make this look dangerous. We need more wrestlers that look intimidating. This whole match...
Wait, Joshua, I have a question.
Yes.
Have you ever watched Alexander Hammerstone before this match?
No, this was my first Alexander Hammerstone match, and my God, I have a boner.
Yeah,
so you like mini Brock Lesnar?
Yes, I do. And I also really like Josh Alexander. I love both of these dudes. This is my first time watching an Alexander Hammerstone match and my first time watching a Josh Alexander match. And I did think it was funny. My name's Joshua and my brother's name is Alex, and I was watching Joshua versus Alex. That made me chuckle a little bit.
Yeah, it's there's definitely a lot of name confusion in this if you really start breaking all of that down.
And Joshua won, so fuck you, Alex.
Can I get my opinion on this?
Yes. I was about to pitch to you to see what your thoughts were.
One of the things that kind of sucks about Impact being Impact is that there are talents that don't get the opportunity to be showcased more. Everybody remembers the North tag team that was Ethan Page and Josh Alexander back in like 2019 and 2020, or maybe they don't if they don't watch TNA. But Josh Alexander has been one of TNA's hidden gems that nobody talks about because he just goes in there and does his job. It helps that he has a very unique look that he adopted because he wanted to stand out and be different. And I'm sure he was appealing to you, Joshua, looking like an amateur wrestler from your amateur wrestling days.
Yes. Did I mention that I had a boner this entire match?
I'm sure you do. But the thing for me is that while I love Josh Alexander, Alexander Hammerstone is a future WWE World Champion. He's a guy who is big, strong, athletic, has everything you want in a wrestling body. If you could create the perfect wrestler, it would be Alexander Hammerstone. The fact that WWE hasn't signed him yet is a little disappointing because this guy has as much potential as a Braun Breaker or an Austin Theory, maybe even more because he's already developed. The only thing that I felt was a little weird was I didn't notice this until I was watching the match, but his face is a little too small for his head, but that's okay.
You're not wrong.
Look, you can adjust that in the create a wrestler settings. I mean, that's first draft. But in any case, the whole thing, Josh Alexander, I've seen bits and pieces of his work, and I've always enjoyed it. This is the first full-length one-on-one match I've ever seen him have, and a perfect guy to have it with Alexander Hammerstone on Hammerstone's first night. Now, I can't remember if Hammerstone signed like an actual long-term deal with TNA. I believe, at least for some time, he's going to be there. But
fact checker on the duty. Hang on 1 second.
Okay, so while Skyler's figuring out how long that.
Hey Siri.
And well, I don't think that's going to work this time. But they made this very invest. They started with a Colonial tie-up.
Mm-hmm.
They sold it. I love the Hammerstone hits one punch to Alexander, and he goes down just with that one punch. Sells it, and then more grappling.
Can I just say I'm glad the crowd didn't go, "Let's go, Alexander! We want Alexander!"
No, because there was clearly more than one brain cell shared between these fans
yeah.
in attendance. And there was at least 5.
Yes.
I also have to say this female referee whose name I never got, she had some bass in her voice.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering why you haven't heard do this, and then she's like, "Hey, get off the ropes!" And I was like, "Oh, all right, okay, cool. Sorry, ma'am." Like,
and
in TNA, the women are stronger than the men.
Speaking of,
we don't know that for sure. But
well, Tessa Blanchard would agree, and then she would call someone a racial slur. But Sean, you were
hold on. Before we get too far into this, Hammerstone has not signed a long-term deal with TNA yet. They're still negotiating. It partially depends on whether or not WWE is going to give Hammerstone an offer.
Yeah, I'm glad you said exactly that, Sky, because it's going to feed into what I'm going to talk about at the end of this match. I'm glad
By the way, the female referee is Allison Lay.
Well, good for her.
She's a
big beefy woman.
And speaking of the refs, the referees, one thing that especially Sean complains about, and a lot of looking at you, AEW, the referees are always made to look like clueless imbeciles. Not so on this show.
Yeah, and that was something. We're going to talk about this all night. There was an abject respect for referees all night long.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was the referee's 10 count and breaking up, going in and breaking up the count so you're not brawling on the side for 50 minutes. I mean, there were some degeneration moments, which, you do what you do.
Yeah.
Which, and that's, I'm not even going to, with that 4-way tag we're going to get to. But for the most part, the referees had authority here.
Mm-hmm.
The referees had, they had gumption. And I respect that very much so. And that all of this, and there was more of a respect for moves in TNA than there are in certain other companies.
There was respect for finishers on this show.
There was respect for finishers.
Which blew my mind.
And I have to make a point here also. I have to put over commentary because they were talking about the fact that Joshua Alexander, he was a world's champion, but he lost the belt because he had a triceps tear, so he had to forfeit the championship. He was the longest reigning champion in history. He's lost 2 consecutive matches, which he hasn't done since 2021. And they're bringing up all these stats, and I'm sitting there going, this is how you sports-based present.
Exactly. Not bringing up records that no one cares about.
Yeah, not drawing down on your cute little notepad up in the office how many wins Hook has, nobody knows who the fuck is, especially Jinder Mahal.
Who the fuck is Hook?
And you know, and that's the thing, is you can sports-based present just by having the commentators with quality selling points.
Yeah, just putting two numbers on the screen, win and loss, that doesn't do anything. You have to add context to it. And those wins and losses have to matter.
And the thing with Josh Alexander's wins and losses is that he has legitimately been on a losing streak. He has lost to Alex Shelley and the World Heavyweight Champion. He hasn't been able to become champion since his return from injury. And there was doubt whether or not he could get the job done against Hammerstone. I mean, it doesn't help that Hammerstone outpowers him and outweighs him. And those shots that Hammerstone was giving Alexander, I bet they hurt.
Oh, yeah.
They looked it.
They hit each other so hard. And also, Hammerstone's selling of the leg was great.
Right, because how do you beat the bigger wrestler? Take out the vertical base. Go for the legs.
Like,
yeah, and I thought that Apron World's Strongest Slam looked awesome.
That was so gnarly.
It wouldn't be the last, but it was the first.
Yeah.
But even still, like, there was one thing that I thought Hammerstone could polish up when he got knocked down and he did the sit up, and he did it split legged, and the only thing that got me with that is like his legs kind of like fish flopped when he did that sit up, so it didn't look as impressive as opposed to like using all of your core strength and tightening in your arms, so it looks like you're just lifting up almost coffin like. But it's fine. I am picking nits.
Yes.
I am picking so much nits that I have no more nits to pick. But the good thing is when Hammerstone's doing this Hulk up, did you notice that Hammerstone never completely no-sold any of the shots that he got?
Yes, I did.
Especially his legs. Like, he did not fully say, oh, I've forgotten my injuries. I'm on the adrenaline of power, and I feel nothing.
Well, even when he's doing his like Hulk up deal, where Josh Alexander is hitting him with punches, Alexander hits him with a forearm and it knocks Hammerstone down to a knee, even though he's like at the point where Hogan would just finger point and do his thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, he still valued the shots, and it actually took him a step down, but he still got, what I forget what he got into it at the end of it, but it was really good. This match was kicking ass.
Yes, it was.
The leg selling of the ankle lock was great. My favorite part of this was the Nightmare Pendulum that Alexander Hammerstone could not get to the cover for.
Dude, when he hit,
because he was too hurt.
Not even that. When, because like in wrestling, like, oh, that you can't go for the cover. They either like they're next to the ropes or they just immediately roll out of the ring as soon as they hit the move. No, he couldn't immediately go for the cover because of his leg. But when he finally gained the will to go for the cover, Josh rolled to his front off his back.
Yep.
I damn near ejaculated.
Genius.
Because that's what you do in real amateur wrestling. You stay off your back. And then he didn't just immediately roll outside the ring. He got on his front to avoid getting pinned because, that's what you do in wrestling. And then he rolled out. You would have to surgically remove my smile and my erection.
Yeah, because he's doing the exact thing that you would have been taught as an amateur wrestler.
Yes, that is exactly what you were taught when you were in amateur wrestling, and it was glorious.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, the whole thing was, and then, we get that, it's not a Death Valley driver, but it was like an FU on the apron from Hammerstone. Then this started getting, a little bit, I was just about to say this is starting to go long, and then they finished the matchup.
Yes.
Well, they do have Josh Alexander kick out of the TKO, which is Hammerstone's finisher.
Yes. And they did that, it was very close, and then, Josh Alexander is like kind of crawling on him, and what surprised me is that they finally did this, Josh Alexander hits his finish, which I can't remember what he calls it. but it's that fisherman planter basically, and the 1-2-3, and Josh Alexander wins. And I first want to ask you what you both thought of this finish, and then I'm going to give you my overall ending thought about why I did not like the winner.
I really liked the finish because it was like just countering moves. Then Josh finally hits him with a move that sets up for his finisher, and then he hits his finisher. And one thing I loved is that while he was covering him, he didn't hook the leg, he hooked the wrist to keep him down. Because you always see them going for the leg and hooking the leg, which you're supposed to do, but I love that he grabbed wrist control while he was covering him. Like, he was still wrestling as he was trying to hold his shoulders down. I loved that. And also, I just think his finishing move looked badass and devastating. And I'm glad that that was the end. There wasn't a ton of... There wasn't 8 trillion finisher kickouts. I know why you disliked the winner of the match, and I get it, but... And I honestly, me too, I was surprised that they did not give Alex the win. But I can't complain too much with the quality of the match that they gave us.
I get why, because if you were to pick between the two on the guy's debut, you would have had Hammerstone win in order to, 1, continue Josh Alexander's losing streak storyline, and 2, to set up Hammerstone for a potential match between him and the guy that won the world title tonight.
Yeah. And Skyler, you basically just touched on what I was going to say here, which was that I understand why they did this, because ideally what I would want to do, like you just said, is have Hammerstone win this, and then set it up where you have the losing streak continue for Josh Alexander. He gets all upset, it adds depth to his gimmick, and then he can have a return match with Hammerstone down the line. However, with WWE almost guaranteed to knock at the door, you can't necessarily give Hammerstone the win because you don't know how long you're going to have him for. And you know that you've got Josh Alexander more consistently as a TNA guy for sure. So I get why, but I don't love the fact that Alexander Hammerstone, who would really benefit from beating, if you were keeping him for a longer period of time than you are, right? If TNA won this bidding war, I'd have had Hammerstone win this match so that Josh Alexander could go do his losing streak stuff. But then you've got Alexander Hammerstone beating a world champion, the longest reigning, who never lost the belt, on his first night there. And that would have really been a huge way to kind of get him already injected into a larger scheme of what maybe your main event scene is going to consist of, even though you've got different guys who are definitely going to be in it, but then you'd have options, to use with Hammerstone. But as we know, and why I asked you to look up the contract details, Sky, if WWE says, hey, ours, then that win would have been for nothing. So I understand why the decision was. I just philosophically would have given this win to Alexander Hammerstone myself, with the idea that maybe, the idea is, hey, we could actually fit you into our long-term plans if you're willing, because we've got some momentum going here and we're really trying to make a play for something bigger, and we could use you as something of a figurehead in various places. But I'm speaking for Scott D'Amore. That being said, I still loved everything about this match. It was a terrific back and forth. Couldn't have asked for a better matchup to have on this show, and really brought the whole show together, I think.
I agree.
Now, let me ask you a question in that vein, Sean.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask, I'm going to ask this from 2 perspectives. So if you're a Hammerstone, you would take the WWE money in a heartbeat, right?
Probably, because there's no way that Triple H and Shawn Michaels are looking at Hammerstone going, man, we could really use a guy like you, and you'd fit so well in with what WWE is and works with, and especially if MJF finally comes to his senses at some point and realizes that he can make some real money at a real company. They could do some sort of thing together, have them be in the same deal. Who knows? But they know that Alexander Hammerstone's value And I think this matchup just further will demonstrate that to them. Do you think somebody in WWE isn't going to take this tape and go to Triple H or tell Michaels and go, look at these guys? They may take both of them, for Christ's sakes.
Right, but let me get that back to that. If you were selfish and you could play God, would you have Hammerstone stay in TNA and build up and be one of their stars, or would you rather have him go to WWE?
Right now, I'd have him build on what TNA's on. Because there's more you have to work less. First of all, it's a lot less on your body. Yeah, you're making less money, but at the same time, think about how stiff the competition is for top guys right now in WWE. And I'm not saying Alexander Hammerstone wouldn't be in the mix, but he wouldn't be at the top of that mix. Let's be real. And it would take some time, and I don't think Hammerstone's window is necessarily closing that rapidly yet. How old is Hammerstone? In his 30s, right? He's in his mid-30s.
32.
Yeah. Oh, God, shit. He's got time. I would say go flesh yourself out and develop even more in WWE, and then go there when your name is so recognizable you don't have to go through NXT to get there.
And that's kind of the thing that we kind of have to say is that, Hammerstone, as good as he is, in this match, it kind of did feel like he's a big fish in a small pond.
Even though I did love his line in the promo of "I'm not a big fish in a small pond. I've always been a shark." That I really enjoyed. That was a good line. But it's just we'll have to see.
Well,
we'll have to see.
I myself have what may be not a hot take, but a lukewarm take, I guess. As much as again, this was my first time experiencing Alexander Hammerstone, and I loved what I saw. I like Josh Alexander more. But, and it has a lot to do with what Skyler said earlier. Because Alexander Hammerstone looks like a pro wrestler, and he wrestles like a pro wrestler, which is good, which is fine. He looks like a badass that would kill you if you touched his food. I don't know why that's the allegory I went with, but Josh Alexander looks like an amateur wrestler that was like, you know what? I'm going to work out a lot and become a pro wrestler and still murder everyone. And that just resonates with me on a personal level. If I were to start watching TNA regularly, it would 100% be for two people, Josh Alexander and Alex Shelley. And I want to go back and watch their TNA World Title match because Alex Shelley impressed me on this show because I'm not super familiar with his work, and this is the first match I've ever seen Josh Alexander have. So this was the best thing on the show. This was awesome. I like both guys, but I like Josh Alexander just a tad more.
I have a feeling that you would love Josh Alexander because more than anybody else, he has the defined gimmick of, no, I'm an amateur guy. I'm going to beat you with amateur tactics because this is what I know. Mm-hmm. And the headgear, which is synonymous with him, as much as it can make him look goofy, it still makes him look like a badass.
He owns it.
He stands out in a group of guys who do not, who shied away from professional wrestling, from actual amateur wrestling in that respect. If Rick Steiner hadn't gotten in so much trouble because of TNA, he and Josh Alexander would have a lot to talk about. And
if Michael Cole didn't ruin it.
Yeah.
How would Michael Cole ruin it?
WrestleMania 27.
That's fair.
He wore that, and he wore a big orange singlet, and it reminded me of when I was on my high school's wrestling team, and I had to wear an orange singlet, and I looked like a dork.
Yeah, well, he was a dork, all right, but now he's the king of Weenie Shire, so God bless him.
Yes.
And
well, speaking of Weenie Shire, I refuse to watch this next match, so fuck you. You guys talk about it.
High five, Skyler, because I also skipped this match.
Both skipped this matchup? Wow, that's funny.
No,
that's really funny.
Dude, let me explain. I detest, and it's AEW's fault. It is Tony Khan's fault. I hate matches like this. I hate triple threat tag team matches now. I hate fatal 4-way tag team matches now. I'm getting sick of 6-man tags. I hate 8-man tag team matches. I hate 10-man tag team matches. Tony Khan, for some reason, this is his favorite match stipulation of all time, and there has to be 12 of them on every Dynamite, every Rampage, every Collision, every pay-per-view, every dark elevation, every ROH. I'm done. I'm tired of it. And it doesn't help that I actually watched a little bit of the New Japan New Year Dash show about a week ago, and that show it started off with a singles match that I thought was actually pretty decent for an opener. And then they were like, now we're going to have a 4-way tag team match. Now we're going to have an 8-man tag team match. Now we're going to have a 10-man tag team match. Now we're going to have a 3-way tag team match. Now, what is wrong with just regular tag team matches? 2 people on each side. No, let me get this out. Two people on opposite sides of the ring. One is legal, one is not. They wrestle, they tag on the hands. There's no outside parties. There's no third team. There's no fourth team. There's no 45th team. There's no 80 different types of this match on a show. God, I want Tony Khan to die. So yes, I skipped this match. And also Vikingo did flips.
Well, let me fill you both in. I will say this. The first half of this match, passable. You would honestly, both of you would be genuinely surprised at how much you'd enjoy the first half of this match.
I will solemnly take your word for it.
When it degenerates, then fucking forget it.
There we are.
And so the first thing I said was, this will be a mess. Let's see who stands out. It's the tag titles. It's the Bullet Club, also known as the Zombie faction, versus the Rascals, versus the Grizzled Young Vets, who I am actually interested in seeing some real tag matches of, and Laredo Kid and Liu Kang in the Dryer, Mike Bailey.
This is another reason why I skipped this match.
This fucking Goombi.
I fucking hate Speedball Mike Bailey.
This dude looks like such a cornball.
He is such a doofus. And his karate gimmick is so lame.
It's so lame.
All I can see is just the letters PWG just like leaking out of the screen when I look at him. And I don't like it.
It's pretty gross.
And
it's pretty gross.
Ugh, I hate Mike Bailey so much. He's so lame.
Well, the thing I will point out is that the Grizzled Young Vets, I like their look. The Bullet Club, I had to admit, the Bullet Club does not get a reaction anymore at all.
Well, they're only 1,000 years old, so.
Yeah, well, it's about goddamn time. But we start out this show and this matchup with a collar and elbow tie-up. Again, even in this, there's a collar and elbow tie-up.
I have another complaint. I have another complaint, by the way. You were mentioning earlier, like, the factions and some of the teams, like, have really lame names. Who names a team ABC?
Well, you see, Joshua, that's the initials of the guys, because one guy starts with an A, and another guy starts with a B, and another guy starts with a C.
Then legally change your names and come up with an actual name for your team besides the first 3 letters of the fucking alphabet. But it was not as bad. That is not as bad as the Rascals.
But the Rascals.
Fuck them.
There's something, all right.
Fuck that name.
Well, I'll get through this quick. They did a collar double tie-up. There was a roll-through double dropkick that would have looked cooler if they had sharpened it up, and it looked sloppy and uncoordinated. Then, all 8 guys get into the ring, and you think that this is going to be everything's just going to degenerate, and they're just going to brawl and fight, and the whole hope is lost, right? Well, in this case, everybody's yelling, and this one referee is in the middle of all 8 guys, and he's pushing all 4 of these guys back. It's like reverse hungry hippos. And he's trying to push all these guys back into the side of the ring and restore order. And here's the twist. He does.
Wow.
and order is restored, and they go back to the match.
It's weird hearing about respect for referees. I've been deprived of it for so long.
It really is. I was very thrown by that, and I'm like, this is actually not bad. And, and the GW or GYV, the Greenberg Young Vets, always tagged each other on the hands, although I realized that this matchup is basically built on the idea that you're backslap tagging other teams, which is an illegal way to tag somebody based on the old rules. So, like, it kind of makes the whole concept of having this type of match flawed at its core. But let's not get into the details. Then Ace Austin goes to do some sort of deal off the top while his partner's got a torture rack on Laredo Kid. But Ace Austin botches it, goes for it again, and the Laredo Kid is sitting there in the torture rack for easily. He's standing there just waiting for something to happen behind him for easily 30 to 40 seconds. Oh, and then the crowd got into it. They enjoyed this chaos, but then it became very spot festy, and there was a 450. Somebody did a 450 where they landed on their knees into somebody's back, and not in a million years would I take that move. And I just kind of stopped caring. I'm pretty sure that the alphabet won.
Yeah.
But the first half of this was good. The other half of it, yeah. So, it's what it was. But we got bigger things at hand here. But before we do, I'm going to change tracks. Kind of like Giselle.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know what you're laughing about.
You catching me off guard with that zinger.
And we're back from being canceled.
Are we?
And now, well, you tell me, editor, are we safe? Okay, well, we're moving on to the women's title match. And it is Jordan Grace challenging Trinity, also known as Naomi, soon to be, for the women's championship, the Knockouts World's Championship, which looks awesome.
Yes.
All the belts look awesome. And
well, all the belts got redesigned before the event, and TNA did a thing where each and every day they had Scott D'Amore give the champion the new belt, and they all look really good, especially the TNA Knockouts Women's Championship and the World title.
Oh, yeah.
This is why I keep thinking that they're trying to make a power move here and get a TV deal where people can actually watch this show somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of get the feeling that is going to be the case, but I will say this, from a couple years ago, when Jordan Grace first showed up in TNA to now, you want to talk about transformations. Jordan Grace looks amazing.
She does. She is
shaped up tremendously.
She is fucking jacked, dude.
Yeah, and she used to be a big old pile of lard, Vader style. And she has really gotten in shape, and I want to just commend her for that. She put the work in to look absolutely tremendous. And Dana Brooke was here with arguably the worst name of anything.
Yeah. Well, her name is grammatically incorrect.
Ash by Elegance, or what I'm going to call her, Ashby.
Ass by flatulence. Ass by flatulence.
Let me ask you guys something. What is this gimmick?
Lame.
It's a high society woman gimmick, a.k.a. what Toni Storm and Carmella did.
Cool.
Do you think there's any shot in hell of this working?
No, it's Dana Brooke. It's not going to work. Although it's weird seeing her with not gray hair? Question mark?
She's basically copying Toni Storm's gimmick.
I'm willing to give this a chance. Maybe she'll surprise us. But
what?
I wasn't really thrilled with her just sitting and nodding, which is basically all she did.
Well, that's actually a good transition spot, saying we'll give her a chance, someone that I notoriously don't like. I have a confession to make. I was never the biggest fan of our good friend Naomi, the wife of one Jimmy Uso. I I always hated watching her wrestle. I thought she was pretty bad in WWE. She was an example of my thing of not everyone that appears on camera should be a wrestler. On Cameron. Fuck. Not everyone that appears on camera or on Cameron should be a wrestler. I was like, there's a reason she was a Funkadactyl, and that's where it should have stopped. She, in this match, she was pretty good in this match. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go into this open-minded, and maybe she'll impress me. And she did. She wasn't amazing. She was honestly probably carried through this match by Jordynne Grace, who was the real star of the match. But
let's not go through the thing. Trinity was very good at getting her ass kicked for 14 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yes.
By the best wrestler on the entire card, and someone that WWE should look at, because this is what Zoe Stark should have been.
Yes. Zoe Stark wishes. But I will give Trinity her flowers. She has improved by a lot since the last time I've seen her in WWE. And when she does eventually come back to WWE, I won't bitch, whine, and moan. But she more than held her own in this match, and I was impressed. And I did not think that I was going to admit that. I was dread.
She is still kind of weird in some of her kicks and flips, and I think she's going to be inherently a little bit sloppy just because that's how she is. And
yeah,
she's
but
never going to get away from that.
She's tightened things up a little. Although I will say there are a couple things she did that did annoy me. She had the word glow written on her attire, and I just still think "Feel the Glow" is one of the worst things that has ever been created by the human race. "Feel the Glow" is the worst catchphrase ever, thus saith me. And also, she did the can kicks, which were lame. She didn't do a whole bunch of them. She did a couple and then stopped, and I was like, oh, that was painful. It was like when a doctor gave me a prostate exam. It only lasted a couple seconds, but it was a couple seconds longer than I wish it was. But other than that, she didn't really do anything that bothered me in the match. And she, again, more than held her own. She needs to... I wish glow didn't exist in the English language anymore. But I honestly, if those are the least of my... Those are the least of the issues. I didn't...
But again, let's move on. Because, Trinity is not the smoke. She's not the fire. She's not the heat. She's not the woman that I wish would bend my neck over and break me.
Oh, Jesus.
Listen, I've accepted that Rhea Ripley is Sean's dominatrix, and I cannot get any of that. But I'm willing to have Jordynne Grace stand on me and call me names.
Okay, Skyler wants...
It's all yours, buddy.
Skyler wants Jordynne Grace to make him a paraplegic.
Well,
I want her to break me over her back. Make me humble.
I will say, this was the Jordynne Grace show. And this is the first time I've ever seen her wrestle. My God, she's great. She is fantastic.
Well, again, it's like anything else in TNA. It's that they're very good at developing young wrestlers. Josh Alexander is one of them, and Jordynne Grace is another. TNA's always had good development of young wrestlers into professionals. Mm-hmm. They're very good at teaching people the basics and very good at making people wrestle the way that they should wrestle. Jordynne Grace's lifts were all fantastic. All of her power moves were great. Mm-hmm. She really did know how to do things.
She was good at selling, and Trinity was good at... Trinity, of course, she had to be good at selling, because that's most of what she did in this match. And speaking of her selling, I can't remember which commentator said this, but the call of the night was when when Jordynne was giving Trinity a chop, and one of the commentators said, you get hit by Jordynne Grace, she's one of those people that you get hit by her, and you are thinking about it for the next week because you still feel it a week later. And I was like, that kind of commentating makes wrestling sound dangerous, and not everyone can and should do it. So I very much liked that call.
No, you don't. Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I was actually a little surprised that Trinity got the kind of pop that she did. But she totally did. She got a very good pop. But Jordynne Grace, I said, damn, JG, you scary.
Yeah.
She did that jackhammer after the tope suicida.
Yeah, they were on the floor at one point, and Jordynne was just like, all right, Naomi, I'm just going to slam you on the floor as hard as I can a lot, and you're going to deal with it. And I was like, oh, God.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it wouldn't stop. And that was the thing. The match was built so beautifully to make Jordynne Grace look like a world-beating world's champion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exactly what needed to happen, but I actually thought that Trinity could have sold a little bit more facially myself, but she was still selling. She held up her own. You know, nothing was very offensive or something that was 40 feet away from her opponent the way it used to be.
Yeah.
You know, I think that this time away from WWE really has done her some good.
Yeah, her kicks actually connected.
She looks cleaner.
Yeah.
And, you know, I love this back and forth, but the I'm skipping way ahead here because this is just Jordynne Grace just beating down on Trinity for most of it. I love that finisher, the Starstruck.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting, a move. And, you know, and this is after the, and then she breaks it and we get the apron pendulum driver that Trinity gets, and then she does the Starstruck. But this finish,
dude,
this pin finish was picture perfect.
This finish made me nut.
Cornbread, damn it, cornbread. Shout out to the late great Dustin Rhodes. Well, he's not dead, but shout out to Dustin Rhodes. His career's dead because he's an AW. But
did you see that Christian recently made him like, hey, you know, Dusty would be disappointed in you. Do you need a new father?
Dude, listen, well, Dustin needs a new company. I wish Dustin were back in TNA for fuck's sake. Anyway,
you wish everybody's on TNA, huh? Get Christian Cage back in TNA.
There's hope here.
Yeah, there's I will agree. There is hope here. Like, TNA is, if they keep up this momentum, they'll become what AEW should have been.
Yeah, they'll go back to what TNA used to kind of be.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really fascinating. But the finish of this with Jordynne Grace powering out of the Starstruck and then just slapping on her finish and taking care of business. 1, 2, 3.
Dude.
This start to finish, this was a great match in a women's match that had no business being this good.
Dude, that finish was amazing. And it elevated the entire match and show for me. Like, again, I came into this dreading it because previously I've never been impressed with Trinity / Naomi. I still wouldn't call myself a fan, but I'm no longer going to dread watching her wrestle. So, and
she's gone from a Dana Brooks to Raquel Rodriguez.
Sure, but this was a good match, and I didn't think it was going to be a good match, but this was a very, very good match.
But yeah, if I'm WWE, I'm throwing some money at Jordynne Grace too. Like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Get this woman there because she's 27. She's in the prime of her career. She looks like $1 million. She can sell. She can hit power moves. Let her be the Zoe Stark that we should have gotten.
Well, in contrast to that, I would say if you're TNA, I'm investing pretty heavily in keeping Jordynne Grace around as long as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Because she is the backbone of this women's division. And for a lot of these people, the reason I would go with TNA right now is that there's not only is there hope, but there's an opportunity here to be on the right side of a momentum swing where you could get even more over, to where if TNA makes the right moves and they could get on a larger television show, when they go to WWE, they won't be passing through the NXT channel. That's the potential that's here if TNA can play their cards right. Jordynne Grace has time.
Mm-hmm.
Savor this moment on top while she's got it. Even though I will make the case, Skyler, that if Jordynne Grace was plopped onto the main roster today, she would be more interesting than 3/4 of the main roster women that got on that program.
Agreed.
And the other thing, too, is that, like, even though we're giving a lot of praises to several of these wrestlers, this roster is still very, very thin. There is opportunities if you're a good wrestler and know what you're doing to get in there and make an impact.
Yeah. No pun intended.
Man.
But that's the kind of way that this team, or this is really starting to figure it out of TNA. They've got the loose framework, but they're starting to piece some things together that I didn't think TNA would ever be able to do again. And that brings us to our main event. Alex Shelley versus Moose for the TNA World Title. We'll start with you, Skyler. What was your thoughts?
I forget how good Alex Shelley is. I just again feel bad that he's kind of been like reduced to being a indie wrestler / occasionally work for New Japan Pro Wrestling. Alex Shelley is one of the best small-time modern wrestlers because he does what he needs to do. Moose is good, but he's also kind of awkward, not gonna lie.
Not as awkward as he used to be.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Before, he used to look like a big, tall deer.
Or moose. A moose.
But, yeah.
Boo.
It's a lot. Well, that's what people were trying to do with him, but he has improved a lot.
Yes.
He's improved a lot. And
I remember...
his selling of this arm all matchup was sometimes over the top, but he made a point to make sure that was very well prominently shown that his arm was giving him shit.
Yes. I will, like, dude, the first time I ever saw Moose, I was like, wow, this dude is green as fuck. But it's been, several years. He was great in this match. I really enjoyed Moose in this match, but dude, Alex Shelley is one of a kind. Not even just, like, his wrestling. His body language throughout this contest. Like, the second he was on screen, his body language just, like... I don't know if I've ever described someone as scientific when it comes to, like, wrestling, but just the way he would try to get into a position for something, it made everything feel more real. Like he was trying to come up with a strategy to win. Come up with a strategy to weaken a body part. It looked like he was thinking about what his next move or play was going to be to do damage and win this match. It was the most scientific-looking wrestling attack, I guess you could say, I've ever seen, and I was like, dude, I am glued to my screen watching this dude operate.
All right, Sean, I'm going to make a comparison, and I think you're going to be tickled by this one. But in many ways, Alex Shelley reminds me of a modern-day Bobby Eaton.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Because Shelley is one of the most experienced wrestlers, and he's known primarily as a tag team guy, but in his singles matches, he's very good at the scientific, picking apart a body part, and the selling. The selling is what really helps with Shelley, because you can see the pain and the suffering in his face. You can see it in his body and his emotion. I know that that's a very high praise, but Shelley is one of those guys who reminds me of Bobby Eaton.
I think there's some interesting parallels there. I would say that Shelley, in the same way that Moose has changed a lot and developed a lot, so has Alex Shelley. He has come a long way from the times when he was kind of the staple of the X Division, where he was doing spots. And that was his thing, and the collection of spots. They were very high octane, hence Motor City Machine Guns. Very fast-paced, but I think what's happened in the years since is that Alex Shelley has slowed down enough to be able to make everything look and feel as smooth as it does now. And that he has really perfected his ability to use his body language as opposed to using his moves all the time. And that's really helped add depth to him. That's why I was saying that Chris Sabin peaked a lot earlier, but Alex Shelley is really coming into his best work now.
Mm-hmm.
And
honestly,
something I'm really proud of.
Honestly, like, again, I haven't watched as much TNA as YouTube, but whenever I would, and the Motor City Machine Guns were on screen, it always felt like, at least to me, Chris Sabin and his friend. And Alex Shelley he didn't really have his own thing. He was just, I'm the second guy that's in the Motor City Machine Guns.
For a long time, he felt that way. I would agree with that.
This dude that I was watching in the main event of this show, this dude just oozes, I'm a main event world champion. Like
without it being
dude.
like forced down your throat. Oh, he's only world champion because he's the guy that's been here the longest. Oh, this is a token run. Okay, thank you, whatever.
No,
he earned his world title.
Yes.
He wrestles like a world champion. It's one of those dramatic developments that, like, I'm all happy for. It's one of those things where, like, the Motor City Machine Guns, more than any other tag team, at least in the modern day, is the tag team that does feel like the guys are as good separate as they are together, because they're both good competitors, both as a single and a tag team. But you can clearly tell which one is currently the better of the two right now.
Dude.
Yeah.
I said this before, but I have got to go watch Josh Alexander versus Alex Shelley. That match just screams orgasm, like endless orgasm. The match, just dude. That's all I can say at this point. Like, although I will say one thing that just about made me jump out of my seat, because again I'm used to how green Moose is, and I haven't seen that much. This drop kick.
That drop kick.
Holy shit!
My God!
I jumped out of my seat.
God. Yeah,
like
that was definitely something.
Okada and Randy Orton both have some competition.
No, like, I look at that drop kick on like Gunther. I want you to do a better drop kick than Moose.
Dude.
Well, I won't lie to you there. I did see a couple parallels between Moose and Gunther here. The one thing I wish Alex Shelley did in this matchup at one point was take a bump for one of Moose's chops. Like,
yeah.
Chop, bump. He didn't do it once. He always stayed on his feet or went to a knee, and I was just a fraction disappointed in that because the chops sounded great.
Speaking of which, I loved early in the match when Shelley was doing chops, and Moose just no-sold him, was like, dude, really? Did you really just chop me? It just looked so intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. It was almost reminded me of when somebody did that to Solo in the corner, and Solo just walked forward like, bro, what are you doing?
Like, yeah, that's not going to work on me, bud.
Yeah. But then, right after that drop kick, after the little fight back, big Uragi. Gigantic Uragi.
Yes.
One of the biggest I've ever seen. And I loved how prominent the injury selling was in this whole matchup.
Yes.
It was really good. You know, I think the only thing with Shelley, the other thing is Shelley, is I think sometimes he looks for reactions just a little too long. Like, where he takes a little bit too long to set up whatever it is that he's going to do, because he's like looking around to get the reaction, but then more time has passed than it should. Not all the time, but occasionally. But then we get to the one critique I have of the film crew tonight. They do a shot on the outside. I'm pretty sure that there was some sort of, I think it was the baseball slide that Shelley did to Moose on the outside, and then Shelley's selling on the outside and just reaches under the ring and grabs a water bottle, and they shoot Shelley grabbing the water bottle and drinking the water, and they have to cover. Well, hydration break, you gotta say, or whatever they said, or, you know. And I'm like, you know, it probably would have been better if you went to a wide shot there, so you didn't see your world champion knowingly taking water out from underneath the ring.
Well, MJF did it.
It was bad then. Nothing AEW does is good. It was.
That was the most "how dare you bring that name into my house" I've ever heard out of you, Sean.
It was the only time that this was acceptable was when RVD was wrestling Triple H at Unforgiven and did the blowing the water, spit the water out at Hunter and got him all hoop cuckapatoo and upset.
Yeah, well, you said Cuck, and I don't think Rusev was involved in that match.
No, not to my knowledge. But in any case, they do here. Then they do a weird quick fight off with the members of the. I didn't feel like this was necessary.
Yeah.
The system comes out only to be fought off almost immediately by Kushida and Sabin, who had just fought each other minutes earlier. We don't talk about the fact that they're just fine now.
Yeah.
Well, they're in a stable. So
Yeah,
like,
they're in a group. They're in a group together. It's Kushida, Sabin, and Shelly. I think their group name is Time Machine.
Do this with the guns. You know, it's like the Motor City Machine Guns had this happen with them in TNA all the time. All the time, where they would be facing each other in X Division matches. And so like that, like, why do they do this? Why do they always do this? Anyway.
But
I mean, come on, Sean, it wouldn't be TNA without vintage TNA.
I know.
Real quick, that right there, the little, oh, by the way, they both have friends, and now their friends are fighting, and now, their friends are gone now. That is the one of maybe two reasons as to why I preferred Hammerstone and Alexander over this one. That it was just very unnecessary and just unneeded.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully it didn't really cause any harm.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't do damage.
Yeah.
But was not necessarily, you know, the full-blown thing. But then we get to the finish of this match with that big in-and-out clothesline that Shelly gets, and the crowd gets pumped.
Dude, I loved the finish. The story of the show was great finish, perfect finish, really good finish. But this finish, oh my god, dude. Can I describe it, please? Because it made me so happy.
Please don't.
Even though I'm sad that Alex Shelley lost, because I'm rapidly falling in love with this dude and his hair. His hair's amazing, by the way. You'd think like having like a weird half ponytail, half just letting it all hang out, half combed, whatever. He has like 3 hairdos in one, but he makes it work. But anyway, he goes for his finishing move that totally isn't Sister Abigail. Shell-shocked, which totally isn't Ryback's move either. He goes for it, but it gets countered, and Moose gets out of it. They wrestle a little bit. He goes for it again, because this goes back to amateur wrestling, and I think I've stated this before, but basically, in amateur wrestling, if you get someone in a hold and they get out, the last thing they'll expect is for you to get them in that same hold again, and then you'll win the match 9 times out of 10 with the second attempt of doing that move, because they'll always expect you to do something different. Alex Shelley tries, and he almost gets the shell shocked the second time. He was closer to getting it this time, but Moose gets out of it a second time, bounces off the ropes, spears the shit out of him. 1, 2, 3. Loved it.
Yeah, and it was one spear, and it was a hell of a spear.
Yes, and it was a struggle, and it was a struggle. It was a fight for control, and the guy that won the control of that exchange won the match.
Yeah,
God, this was good.
That's exactly what you want.
Yes.
You know, that's exactly what you want, a world title. And I loved in the hype to this, Moose being basically like, Shelly, I respect what you've done for TNA for this business, but it's time for me to take the keys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to take the keys from you. And you know, I like this. And Moose is a good heel and a good guy to have as your world's champion heading into this turned page for TNA, especially with the debut you're about to do at the tail end of this. Would you like to tell people about it, Skyler?
No, because I don't like this debut because it sucks. No, I am getting paid.
How dare you say such things about Maximilian Zigglesworth?
I didn't like this debut because they did the trope of playing the music and then the guy appeared from behind that WWE does.
Fair.
But yeah, they get the Moose people, like, whatever.
The Moose people!
On stage celebrating.
That's a much better name than the system.
Way better name than the system.
The Moose people.
Moose people all the time.
And they come out with antlers and the lights stay on.
I mean, that's the House of Black.
The Moose people. That was great. That was amazing.
Anyway, they get the stable out here. They're also right on the ramp in an awkward, contrived way. They play music, Nick Nemeth, Titantron, and they all look to the entranceway when Nick Nemeth comes from behind, super kicks Moose, and then runs to the crowd and then takes off his t-shirt into a TNA t-shirt.
And a zigzag, but then he reveals the TNA t-shirt, and the crowd lost their minds.
Yes.
It was a small crowd, but they were hyped.
I wish we had a what is Nick Nemeth doing in the Impact Zone.
Yeah.
I know. Because he's the guy who's like perfectly set up for that joke. It just happened way too late.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's okay. That is honestly okay, because if there's any one guy who has WWE name recognition relatively, who would be a great guy to help bring great matches and attention to a program that is starting to retake off, it's Nick Nemeth. I've got faith in this dude.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I'm excited for this. I am genuinely excited that TNA is going to have this guy, because he's exactly the kind of guy, especially if WWE mercifully lets Bobby Roode out of the prison and he can come and join his buddy and Robert Roode can come back to TNA. I'm just saying, there's a lot of guys that WWE isn't using that they could get rid of soon that could be of great value to TNA. And I'm excited to see where they head. I'm excited to see where all of this heads. But now let's get to ratings.
Okay.
Let's get to ratings to close this out. And let's start with Josh. Let's start with Josh again. Your thoughts on TNA Hard to Kill, their first pay-per-view back as TNA.
I didn't know what to think of this pay-per-view going in. I was like, okay, this is TNA, and I have a little bit of history with TNA, not any good history, but it's under new management, and Sean is very excited, so I'll give it a shot. There were a couple things here and there that I didn't care for, and there was one match that I skipped, but the 3 singles matches on this show were the show, and what a show they were. I mean, Josh Alexander and Alexander Hammerstone, that was phenomenal. The Knockouts World Title match was great, and Jordynne Grace is amazing, and Trinity is a lot better than she used to be. And the main event was also fantastic. And even the Knockouts Tag Team title match was good, and it was perfectly timed and perfectly structured. It's exactly how I would have done it, therefore I liked it. Because I'm a narcissist. Even the Women's Ultimate X match was okay. It was a lot better than it had any right to be. The only thing I really didn't care for was the whole segment with Dirty Dango and PCO and all that jazz. But that was more of an angle than a match, and it wasn't insultingly bad. And I just wish that Vikingo could do something other than flips, and it should have just been Saban versus Kushida 1-on-1. But overall, this is a solid first step for the rebranding of TNA, and I look forward to seeing what they're going to do next. I enjoyed this show. It's not very often you get a show where you're like, dude, there are 3 solid fucking matches you can go back and watch and enjoy. This show has it, and boy, TNA sure is hard to kill, and so is this show. There's so many hard to kill jokes. That joke is hard to kill. I'm giving this show a solid 7.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it.
All right. A very favorable mark for TNA standards. For TNA, Skyler, why don't you bring the scale down a little bit?
Just slightly. I mean, we didn't even talk about the production, which for a 3-hour show, they were very quick. They didn't do much milking. It was match, angle, backstage, match, promo, video, match. Entrances weren't too long. Got in, got their shit done in 3 hours, so we don't count the pre-show.
Oh, speaking of the production, I really like how TNA's vibe is dark and gritty, and wrestling needs more of that. As much as I like WWE as of late, they're a little too squeaky clean for my liking. It's a little you can feel the PG sometimes. I like that this show was like, oh, we're TNA, we're dark. This ain't your daddy's wrestling. Don't let your mom know that you watch this, and I appreciated that.
Okay, now you stepped on my point.
Yes.
Which is
that TNA fills a void that was gone whenever TNA left, and that's that we need this cult underground kind of dingy wrestling that's not necessarily minor league, but is clearly a step below WWE because they fill a void. Wrestling needs companies like TNA, MLW, NWA until they got fucked up by stupid decisions, to fill in the gaps and build up talent so that they can go to bigger and better things. The wrestling ecosystem is better when TNA is around. As annoying as the name is, because Banks Vader, having said that, with this show, again, it's a good show, but again, I'm going to temper my expectations because the people that I expected to perform did. Nobody outside of Grace really, wowed me, and I need more TNA talents to wow me before I'm fully back on. But it's still a solid show, and I'll give it a 6.5.
That's still a fair rating. That's still totally a fair rating. Well,
I do have to go now because I have to make dinner, so I'll see you boys later. But Sean, I'm sure you're going to give it a wonderful score that's somewhere in the middle.
Well, you're not incorrect about that, Sky. Thank you for joining the line. We will see you next time we come in for whatever we're doing. And JoshAgeddon, you get to hear what I get to say.
Yes.
So
It's just you and me, Daddy.
just us now.
Yeah.
So basically, my thing for this show is I am literally in the middle. I'm in between. I gave it a 7. But there's a lot of things about this matchup and about this company. It has endured so much. And it really got me thinking, my God, the difference between the relaunch at a first impression of TNA and this show versus the relaunch of a new version of NWA. And how badly they screwed that.
I figured if I'm going to record a podcast,
in that case. But it's amazing to me that TNA could pop a show in like this, advertise it as well as they have, get the reaction they've had from it. Ziggler's debut on YouTube has almost 1 million views on
Wow.
the YouTube video. Just to put that in perspective, they've gained attention.
Mm-hmm.
They have earned heads here. And enough to turn mine to actually take a look at this pay-per-view and say, hey, this is something that I want to watch. And truth be told, I was not disappointed. Was it terrific? No. Is it WrestleMania 39 Night 1?
No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I will say this. TNA had no reason to do this, except Scott D'Amore's passion made this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not going to say that we are going to be dedicated TNA watchers, but I'm willing to give Slammiversary a shot to see how it's going.
Yeah, I was about to ask, do you want to do like a review of Slammiversary?
I would like to just see how it's going.
Okay.
Well, we have to see when their next show is because they haven't announced what their next pay-per-view is going to be.
Right, which I don't care. I'm into bigger shows anyway, because now a lot of their shows are still just their TV program, and they have a couple pay-per-views, but let's check on this in a couple months and see how it's doing. If they go back to Bungusville, then we'll know that they went the wrong direction. But here's my bold claim and my big bold take to finish off this show. By the end of 2024, both with a TV deal and with ratings, although the ratings might be a little shakier, but with the TV deal for sure, TNA will be back in second by the time this year is over. AEW will have lost their TV deal and have gone so far down the tubes that it will be beyond as embarrassing as it is now. And TNA will be in a spot where they may not be getting millions of people, but they're going to be getting enough people where they're going to have some network want to work with them to get that show onto a much more accessible program. And I hope they do. I genuinely hope they do. If they trim the fat on this show, they could have a viable alternative. And is that really all we can ask for in this 2024 world? We're not asking for you to be competition. We just want you to be something else.
Dude, honestly, I hope it happens. I would love it if TNA became the second and just completely knocked AEW off of its teetering little pedestal. There are more cracks and probably some actual crack by the day. And if that happens and TNA is a strong number 2 and AEW basically ceases to exist, I'll be happy. You won't hear any complaints with me.
Especially because when we look at it, Major League Wrestling has bumbled Alexander Hammerstone, and they're probably going to lose Jacob Fatu too because he's talking about going to Japan more. And NWA was almost there, and they're going to lose their shit.
Yeah, speaking
And
of
imagine
drugs.
if TNA gets Jacob Fatu as well. Because WWE's kind of arm's lengthing him because of his whole, criminal record. But if TNA is willing to work with him and kind of find a way to maybe either work that into an angle or stray away from that altogether and just present him as the guy that he is, that could be, you could have some real quality talent on TNA that you could turn into actual quality stars. They're on their way. They're on their way. I think the future is bright for TNA. I could end up needing to eat my words for that. But for now, I'm proud of you, TNA. I really am. And I wish you the best of luck. And with that said, thank you all for listening to this edition of the Court Martial Podcast. Stay tuned for the next one, whether it's Guess the Program or we do something different or we got this thing called the Royal Rumble coming up, don't we?
Yes, we do.
We may want to talk about that too, won't we? So, folks, stay tuned. There's more reviews, there's more to do, and there's more for you. We'll be right back right after this, and I'll let JoshAgeddon close out TAP.
Oh yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to sink our fangs deep into the bone marrow of the Royal Rumble in just a couple weeks, and I hope you guys all enjoy this review, and I hope you enjoy our Royal Rumble review. And yeah, good job TNA. This was a solid first step, and like Sean said, I wouldn't say I'm as optimistic, but I do hope things improve, and I hope that they continue to get stronger and better with every passing day. But thank you guys so much for watching and listening to this review. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Good night, everybody. Oh, and yeah, Vikingo did flips.